Hi again everyone, I'm Phil Liggett and welcome to our first ever tape coverage of the Belgian classic Ghent Wevelgem. Now this is one of the classic races that doesn't get the publicity it deserves. It comes just 3 days after the Tour of Flanders, which is always the second round in the World Cup, before Paris-Roubaix in France and before the other famous Belgian classic Liège-Bastogne-Liège. There simply is no room in the calendar for this race, but the Belgians know how good a race it can be, and so too do the riders because they come here in great numbers. All the talent is lined up. This year the organisation, in order to try and break up the sprint finish, put in 2 climbs of the Kemmelberg Hill in Flanders. We're going to pick up the action now as the 10 leading riders come towards the second climb and the cobblestones of the Kemmelberg. Well, the introduction of the Kemmelberg this year might have had its effect because these 10 riders, they're hanging on to a tenuous lead of just over 20 seconds. This is Guido Bontempi, the winner of Ghent Wevelgem back in 1984. That then was his first classic victory. Since then, of course, we've seen him win stages in the Tour of Italy and the Tour de France, and he's looking very, very sharp indeed this year. Little bit of a down year last year, no victories at all. And the man that started all of the action in this leading group of 10, Stefan Yoho, off to the left of Bontempi, and the riders now working the way up towards the summit. This is Johan Museeuw who has come up on Bontempi, but the group, you know, is losing ground because look down the back there. These 10 riders who consolidated before the first climb of the Kemmelberg are now down to just 18 seconds. Bontempi over the top. There goes Johan Museeuw. Rudy Darnen's there. And now paying the price of his long earlier breakaway, Stefan Yoho is falling off the back. Dirk de Wolf on the left of our picture, and this is Maurizio Fondries, the world champion, at the expense of Steve Bauer, and there is Bauer on the right, and Sean Yates, the 2 Motorola boys, riding extremely well. Kelly too, Sean Kelly in the blue jersey too, and Abdu Japarov, last year's winner, hanging on grimly on the climb because last year, of course, the race was predominantly flat, and in order to break the grip of the sprinters on this race over the last few years, the organisers have gone back to the Kemmelberg to try and break it up. A superb crowd, 21 seconds officially the gap, so they've gone away a little bit on the climb. Yoho in trouble, and it doesn't look like 21 seconds to me, because this group is closing very, very quickly, and it hasn't split the field up, which the organisers had hoped for, because now once we're over the top of the Kemmelberg, we're going to have something like 24 miles to go down to the finish. They'll pick up a favourable wind as they run down towards the finish in Wevelgem. And, you know, it could still be a case of riders slipping away. There's Dagot Lauritsen going through, checking out the opposition. Eric van der Arden just there. And Jacques Hanegraaff. There's an awful lot of riders here who could deliver the killer blow now once they got over the cobblestones of the Kemmelberg. A lot of riders hanging on in there. So the introduction of Mont Kemmel, or the Kemmelberg, depending on whether you speak French or Flemish, has not broken up the field as they expected. And this little graphic here is in fact indicating that Stefan Yoho, who went out on the attack at Ostende, and that was some 43 kilometres into the race, where he caught the leader on the road there and has been on his own until he was joined by the 9 men forming this leading group of 10, has now been dropped from the 10. So there are 9 riders in the lead, but quite honestly the main field are so close to them now. Well, the first time down this hill they went straight on, did a circle and back up the Kemmelberg. Now they're making a right turn and heading out towards the finish of Wevelgem. This breakaway consisting of some very, very strong men indeed, and this rider here, number 182, is Giuseppe Petito, who has played a prominent part in this move, and number 61 is Franco Ballerini. We're waiting for his classic victory this year. He's riding on tremendous form. And Olaf Ludwig is here too for the Panasonics, and Johan Museeuw. There really are some terrific riders in this league. There's Vali Tebaldi, we've seen win 2 stages of the Tour de France over the years, and Rudy Darnen's tucked in at the back. And in fact this breakaway now very, very strong indeed, but they're not clear of the field at all. They did try to break it up, but they haven't succeeded. There's Stefan Yoho, and he's done well to rejoin. William Ballerini coming on the back. Johan Museeuw. Museeuw still waiting for a victory in a classic this year. He's been knocking on the door, and there's the complete lineup for you now. Rudy Darnens, Ballerini, Schmil, the Soviet rider who won the Grand Prix Pino Cerami around this time last year, and now again showing the early season form. So So this is the group that's assembling at the front. They're still the same 10. They've survived the second crossing of the Kemmelberg, but by how much? Let's have a look down the road, and there's a very big bunch lining up behind them. Look at the stragglers finally getting on after the descent of the Kemmelberg. It's not an easy descent either, because it's all cobbled, and they're probably pretty thankful today that there's no rain coming down, because the left-hand bend halfway down would have been extremely difficult indeed. An attack here from Ariosto. This is Adriano Baffi going across. There's Max Sciandri, the new signing from Motorola. Sciandri trying to grab the wheel of the top sprinter from Ariosto, and they're now trying all to shoot across here. And can they get across the gaps? Because quite clearly they've sensed that they must catch up with these 10 riders. They're very, very close indeed, some 15 to 18 seconds the gap, and they're still something like 24 miles from the finish. So a chase group developing. Main field, going to have to do something about this. A lot of riders now, they've come over the top of the Kemmel for the last time. There we are, 37 kilometres to go. That's about 26 miles, 25, 26 miles to go to the finish. A lot of riders will now feel that they've crossed the Kemmelberg. The big obstacle is out of the way. They're going to say, hey, we're still here. And now they're going to start thinking of getting up there for the finish. The wind will come around now, largely behind them, as they make their way towards the finish. And that is Vyacheslav Yekimov, who's trying to catch on to the train that appears to be moving towards those leaders. This is a good working unit, this. Let me just remind you of the names in that front group. Apart from Guido Bontempi, you've got Tebaldi, Olaf Ludwig and Rudy Darlens, both Panasonic riders, Franco Ballerini. I mean, these are all likely winners of this race in that breakaway group. And Johan Museo, André Schmiel, and a young rider from Belgium, 23 years of age, Peter Farazijn. Petito's been riding well, the Italian, he's up there, and of course the rider who started the move really, Stefan Yoho, at the foot of the Kemmelberg with 2 climbs to come. Yoho was picked up by 9 riders, and that's what led us to this leading group of 10. But it's going to change now, I feel. This little group getting together. There's Vyacheslav Yekimov, rather. 5 men down. Sciandri there. Interesting character, Max Sciandri, because he was born in Derby in England. He moved down to Bournemouth in England, where he left when he was 6 years of age and went across to Italy. He regards himself as Italian, and indeed he speaks, of course, fluent Italian. But his parents now live in Los Angeles, so I guess that he's done the circuit, and he certainly qualifies for membership of the Motorola team. Well, Motorola could do with some results now, and in Sciandri they've got a chance of a win here. Sean Kelly has got up to this chase group. There he is. Kelly having tremendous start to the year. 3 excellent wins already. Sciandri anxious to get this breakaway going, pull back that lead group, and Vyacheslav Yekimov's going to help him. So this is a very workmanlike chase group now. And Van der Arden, Eric Van der Arden has come up into this group as well. And it looks to me as though we've also got one of the other riders who's coming up here, Marek Kulash. Last time I saw Marek Kulash race, he was winning the Commonwealth Bank Cycling Classic in Australia a couple of years ago. Since then turned professional and still looking for a good result. And this rider here is Dominique Arnold from the Castorama team. Now you can see the open road, you can see the group here. Now this is going to get swept up by fear, because that main field is still full of fight. Looks as though we've got Valery Tebaldi driving along. In fact, that was Johan Museo who took a look over his shoulder. There's the Kemmelberg in the background, but away from that now. That's behind, that's crossed, and the main field know that they've got to go for that group now. They've formed a nice big compact unit. It seems to me as though there are a lot of riders willing now to take up the chase and get down to business and pull back this field. Just look into the heart of the peloton there, everybody working away here. Well, normally when you get a breakaway of 10 with such star names as Ludwig, Ballerini, Museo, Bontempi in the group, you'd expect them to stay away, but it's not going to be the case. 36 kilometers to go. It's about 22, 23 miles from the finish, and the echelon is forming. The wind indicating now, coming from the left of our screens, as they start to form the echelon. And a slight slackening in the pace. Nobody willing to take up the chase at the moment. A split in the centre of the field too. That's been caused by the change of wind direction. And this rider here is Mario de Klerk from the Buckler team. He's been left to do a fair bit of work. Achter Volgers, well, that's from our Flemish friends on Belgian television. It means the chasing group. And Tom Cordis, former junior world champion on the PDM team. A little bit of a gap forming, but the tempo is riding high. And Nigel Perry, I think it is, the Englishman, the only Englishman on the Varta team, having a little dig here. It's been very, very difficult to break clear at this stage of the race. The road is perfectly straight, and these counter-attacks are doing no good at all to that chase group, or that lead group rather, of 10. This is Eric van der Aarde, who's coming up now. Looks over to see who's come with him. Well, Yekimov has, and I think the whole field is lined up behind. One or two riders don't want to take part in the chase, of course, because their teammates are up the road. But the official gap now, just 15 seconds. The long flowing locks of Eric van der Aarde, former winner of Paris-Roubaix, and in fact this rider here, well, it wasn't Nigel Perry, it was Marc BOUILLON from the Colstrop team. And he's certainly driving. The wind at the moment appears in fact to be coming almost on the noses rather than behind. But there's some tremendous effort being put in here. Frans Maassen has also come up towards the front. He's having a good start to the season. They're all very concerned by the fact that probably the big favourite to win this race, Johan Museeuw, is in that lead group. The Italians too, well represented by Bontempi and Franco Ballerini. The organisers must feel a little bit upset about this, because they've tried to break this race up this year. It's 131 miles, 177 riders taking the start. And now they are finding that this field could well be coming together, because there is the quarry, just 10 of them, a big group, and it may be because there are so many that they're really not getting it together properly. Stefan Yoho is not doing too much work now since he formed the breakaway. Humidity 70 degrees, this is what the graphics mean. A temperature of 18 degrees Celsius. And that's around 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Darnans, always ridden well since he won that world title, which in itself was a little bit of a surprise 2 years ago in Japan. You may remember that Dirk de Wolf was second, and Dirk de Wolf was the rider involved in that crash with Dagotto Lauritsen coming towards the last circuit of the event. And to this day, Dagotto Lauritsen will never know if he would have been the world champion by the end of that day in Japan. The man who certainly was Rudy Darnans, and he's a very strong rider in his early season classics. And this looks like Jesper Skibby here now moving up to the front as well. Skibby, always a rider who can turn on the style. Brian Holm going through on the inside. Plenty of riders here. Jan Shaw, 22 seconds. We're running out of time towards Wevelgem. Jan Shaw now setting the pace. Jesper Skibby in second place. So there's a lot of riders here who really do feel that if they could close this race down, their sprinters will be in with a chance at the finish. Jan Shaw doing plenty of work here. Brian Holm, used to be known as Brian Holm Sorensen, but he dropped the Sorensen and stayed purely Brian Holm. Well, there's a lot of silent pain at the front of the peloton right now, and they feel as though they have got that lead group within their clutches. The Tulip team, that's the light green jerseys, are packing about 3 or 4 men up towards the front there. This is a new approach, by the way, this year, and the roads, as you can see, extremely narrow now. A road like this is going to favour the breakaway, because there's not too much room for a change of pace at the front, and if the breakaway teammates get to the front of this bunch here, they could slow it right down. But it's not very far, is it? It's not very far. 18 seconds, they're saying. It doesn't even look like 18 seconds now. As the field go through this particularly nasty and narrow stretch of road, they'll break out onto a main highway shortly, and then they'll be looking towards the finish at Wevelgem. and surely those 10 are not going to stay away now. Nice sign of spring on the trees here. Well, Yoho, I think, senses it's not going to work. He's not been off the back of this group since he rejoined it after being dropped on the climb of the Kemmel. He's not riding like he was earlier. 30 kilometers to go. That's about 19 miles from the finish. And Yoho sitting at the back. And I don't think, you know, because of this narrow road, whether the cars in between should really be there now, because they can't speed past this group. And with the gap down to 15-18 seconds, it doesn't leave much room before the riders will be on the tail of any convoy, and that, I have to say, is a little unfair on the leaders. Darnan's also sensing that this breakaway is not going to work, and he must be a little bit amazed, as I am, because some tremendous names in here. They should have worked this breakaway. Peter Fadazine looking over his shoulder, and we've got a service call. This is one of the Kohlstrop riders. And it looks to me as though it's Jan Bogart. Well, that's a real shame. Bogart has a problem. Bogart's the sprinter of the team, and this finish would have suited him, but he's a long way down the bunch anyway. So Jan Bogart calling for the service cars, confirmation of the breakaway, same 10 riders, but it's not going to be for much longer. Somebody shot off the front there, in and out of the camera motorbike, and the chase is on again. Been a little battle for the chief commissaire to get through, but he's through now, and the rider's very thankful by the look of it to take the back wheel of his car there. Now this is Tebaldi here and Yoho, and I think we're looking at the front of the group here too. Well, they're on them, so they're on them, and this is the Tulip team coming up from the rear, and the rider bringing them up is Brian Holm, and he's gone straight by. So Brian Holm has gone straight by Valerio Tebaldi and Stefan Yoho. And this is turning out now to be a terrific finish to Ghent Wevelgem, because we're going to be in for a treat with the sprinters. There's so many good sprinters at the front of this race. And Brian Holm certainly isn't one of them. He would like to be a few seconds ahead at the line if he could get there. The Tulip boys will rely more on some of their faster finishers. They don't really have a great sprinter. Peter Peters is their man they'll rely on if he can get him to the finish. And Tebaldi somehow has found the strength to take his place right at the front. Look at the length of that line, right down as far as the eye can see. And still Yoho too. And it's been a long day out for Stefan Yoho since he made his attack at Ostend, right on the coast of Belgium. And surely his legs are feeling tired now. Brian Holm again. Tito looks over his shoulder, but I'm afraid everybody is here. Olaf Ludwig, quite content just to ride along in 3rd or 4th place. He knows now that he must be amongst the favourites if this race comes into Wevelgem in a bunch. Olaf Ludwig already the winner this year of a stage in the Tour of the Mediterranean, the Traverse la Belgique, the race across Belgium, and the semi-classic Kuurne Brussels-Kuurne. So he's having a great time in Belgium this year, and this could be another killing for him too now that this race has come together. He's marshalled it well. And now he's moved right up to the front of the race, and this race is now going along with this favourable wind. It's cracking along at about 28 miles an hour, I would think. And the face there of Tuan Pools sort of tells it all. The pain is on now as they're trying to hold this race together for the sprinters, while others are trying to break away and split it up. 166. Well, that is Eddie Schurer, former national champion, and he too will be in with a good sprint. Jack Hanegraaff from Panasonic. Steve Bauer also riding a tremendous race today. Bauer has been very, very attentive at the front of this race. 15 miles to go. And for the first time since they picked up the field, it looks as though they're beginning to take an assessment of the stock. But there's an attack immediately, and this is Bruno Kengialta who's gone. And I think he's being chased down there by one of the Kohlstrop riders. This is Jack Hanegraaff, number 37. And again, a savage attack has brought the field into 1s and 2s at the front. Brian Holm has watched everything. He's always been in on the action. It's Marc Bouillon from the Kohlstrop team who's got across to this attack. Hanegraaff, Henrik Redant from the Lotto team. And And again, the speed at the front drawing this race into a long, thin line. And one rider going the shortcut over the pavement. And somebody's let the gap open. 6 riders trying to go clear. These counterattacks will come time and time again now. They'll hope to find a weak link in that long line of riders, and that'll crack it. And then there'll be a breakaway on the road. There's a Motorola rider got up to this group too. Well, that looks like we're down at the front for Lotto. Again, the field has come back. The Motorola rider looks to me as though it might well be Steve Bauer who's come up. He's on the right of our picture. Almost overcooked it on the bend there. It's a very tight bend, that one. We came through there in the car just before the race. Very sharp bend indeed. A bit of cobbles on the corner as well. One or two riders having to slam the brakes on. And the trouble with corners like that is the front of the field have the advantage. They're in there first, they're out first, they are sprinting away while the back of the field is slowing down, and of course it makes it very hard indeed for the back riders to get onto the line again. Now this is Andre Schmiel, number 68, who's just gone through our picture, winner of the Grand Prix Pinot Cerami. He's been in the front all day. He was a member of that original break of 10, which surprisingly has been caught. A little bit of live commentary going on from the motorbike there for our friends from Belgian television as well. 166, Eddie Schurer, he'd like it to come down to a sprint finish, I think. And number 35, Marc Sergeant. I once heard him cruelly described by a commentator as the man who almost has won, because he's always there in the big classic races, but he doesn't quite finish it off with a good result. And it looks like he's in a position again to be doing just that. Helvetia have got Henrik Trumheller up here, one of their new riders. Looks like our cameraman's got himself in a little bit of a spot on the far right. Frans Maassen. And Lekkerbond means that Maassen has punctured, so he's got a flat and he's out the back of the race, and that is a bit of a blow for Buckler, because they've lost one of their strong finishers. Winner of the Amstel Gold last year, Frans Maassen. Well, it's not usual to see riders riding along here in short-sleeved racing jerseys in April in Belgium. It's often cold, windy, sometimes even snowy. Well, this is a very, very spring-like day today. It really is a most pleasant day for bike racing. And once again, we're having a demonstration of some very fit professionals this year. Now look at this. There's the change of direction. And now the echelons forming immediately as the wind veers around now. Coming in from the top left of our picture, the time to attack perhaps. Somebody has flown off the front of that breakaway. 21 kilometres to go, just over 12 miles from the finish. Now, who's going to take up the chase? Alan Piper there in the green jersey of Tulip. And the counter-attacks coming from the Lotus Festina team and from Carrera. Well, this rider here from the Z team is Francois LEMARCHAND. And we've seen the brake go. He's having a little sneaky look underneath his arms there to see what sort of gap he has. It's certainly opened. So it was LEMARCHAND who put in that excellent attack. But I would have thought he's chosen absolutely the wrong place to do it, because the road ahead of him is perfectly straight and they're going to see him for miles. And that will not bode well for him. And that's very, very sad indeed. That is a service call there. And I think indeed it's Johan Museeuw. No, it's Peter de Klerk. Well, it's equally as bad, because de Klerk is a superb rider. A back wheel puncture, I think, for Peter de Klerk. And he is going to have to make a very quick change. Well, the Lotto car is there, driven by the team manager, Jean-Luc Vandenbroek. But I'm afraid with the race going at this sort of speed now, there's no way that de Klerk is going to come back into the action. We're at Zandvoort. And the little graphic here indicating we have 1,600 metres of cobbled roads at Zandvoort still to go. And Zandvoort coming just 21 kilometres from the finish. Well, there's the confusion. And another rider has taken the opportunity to change the wheel as well there. And still de Klerk is left on the roadside. Well, I think we can safely... That's not de Klerk, in fact, that's somebody else. That's a Telecom rider who's punctured as well. So on that short stretch of cobblestones, it looks as though 4 riders have gone out of the race. De Klerk being the most significant, and Frans Maassen already off the back as well with his puncture. Well, you can be as fast as you like, and 9 seconds is a good time for a quick wheel change, but 9 seconds is a long way when you're coming towards the last 12 miles of a classic race like this. You're left out in the wind, and you're going to have to ride very strongly indeed just to rejoin the pack, and there's a big split in the field now. The constant pressure by the riders who don't want to be involved in the sprint finish as they continue to attack, and this looks like a Soviet rider here, Manulov, who's going clear. Over the cobblestones at Zandvoort, not too bad. And in fact, this rider here is Patrick van Roosbroek. But again, he's being hauled back. Jacques Hanegraaff from Panasonic is the man sent up to try and do the damage. And number 68 going through is André Schmiel. That man has been everywhere this last hour of the race. So Schmiel clearly feeling confident with himself. Last year he shot to the fore with a good win in Grand Prix Pino Cerami. A grand old man who was the oldest winner of Paris-Roubaix back in 1960. He was 38 years old then. But there's a lot of individual effort being made here, but nobody is getting it together to try and work away from the main field. Coming to the end of this stretch of cobblestones now from Zandvoort, this right turn I would think. And again, a major field coming up towards the finish. There are 177 who started this morning. I would say that this field isn't far short of 100 strong. A glance over the shoulder there by Jean-Claude Colotti. He'd like it to stay together, the demon sprinter from the French Z team. Greg LeMond, by the way, not in Ghent Wevelgem today for the Z team. He's saving all his efforts to concentrate on a good performance in the upcoming Paris-Roubaix. And looking straight into our camera lens there, Jan Wijnands, waiting to see who's going to make the next move. This is Jacques Hanegraaff coming through on the inside. 18.9 kilometers to go. About 11 miles, and you can see the long straight roads that I keep talking about just briefly. They're not the sort of roads that breakaways will succeed on. You're going to need a group of about 5 or 6 riders willing to get down some solid work, and also a moment's inattention from the main field before a breakaway will go on a road like this. This is Jacques Hanegraaff who's looking across, and Schmiel is still there. Somebody else has gone after whoever's broken away. And that looks like Brian Home again, and sure enough, the riders jumping onto the wheels as they fly past. A lot of teams represented at the front in the action. But the names you would expect not to be here, but they won't be far away watching. Names like Sean Kelly, Johan Museu, Olaf Ludwig, Abdu Japarov perhaps, who won this race last year. He's still in this group. The sprinters who are hoping that their teammates will control these attacks, keep the race finally together, then maybe they can come up with the goods when we get down to Wevelgem. It's a very, very good straight sprint finish in Wevelgem. A sort of finish that would suit Sean Kelly perhaps. And the rider going through on the attack here is Angel Camarillo, picking up a little group. Francois LEMARCHAND again from Z, who's been very active these last 10 kilometres. He's got into the group again at the front. Brian Home is never far away from the action either. Same names trying to hold this race together while others are trying to break it up. Tempo temporarily lost because they can see the straight road ahead. Whose turn next is it to go? And the Lotus team are coming up on the outside. Bauer is there too. Steve Bauer been very attentive for this race. Sean Kelly taking a drink and resting about 20 men down the pack. The perfect place at this stage of the race for the sprinters. Ludwig also is not too far away from Kelly's side. Well, I think it's fair to say that probably the fastest finishers in the world of cycling are in this race today, and despite the 2 climbs of the Kemmelberg, they are right here in this pack. Men like Cipollini, Abdu Japarov, Ludwig, Museu. They are probably the fastest finishers we have at the moment in the world, and they're all right here, and we're not seeing anything of them at the moment. And there's Van der Aarden. Well, he's not as fast as he used to be, but he's still a very useful sprint finisher. That looks Maurizio Fondriest who's moving up and going on to the attack. Slight gradient indicated on the climb there, 5%. Gradient of 1 in 20. Now this is an interesting move because it's come after a lull. The riders were obviously getting a little bit tired of the attack and counter-attack. That's the time to attack once the moments of inattention creep in. Riders are feeling a bit fatigued. There's a Motorola rider gone off at the front as well. And it looks to me as though we've got a Lotus rider also trying to latch on to the chase group. And Jean-Claude Colotti here says somebody else can come and do the work right now. And he's taken some help there from Rolf Goltz, a German rider who walked away with the Tour of the Mediterranean this year, having won the first stage by nearly 20 minutes. And then after that sort of victory on the opening day, it was a formality that he would still be the leader by the end, and he was. This looks like it might be Soren Lilholt who's coming in onto the action there in the green jersey. Yes, it is. I think the other rider there is Mauro Gianetti from the Festina team, sitting at the back here of the line. Look at that long road. If you don't need a picture like that really to demoralise if you're on the attack, do you? And the speed over the ground of the big peloton, it's got to be 25, 28 miles an hour. Lots of fluid movement. And that's an indication a lot of riders there don't want to go through either. They've followed the line right to the right-hand side of the road, the wind coming slightly nose to the left. And number 68 here is Andre Schmil. He seems to be getting into just about every move, this man. Mammoth amount of work being done. He's sharing the lead here with Danny Nellison from the PDM team. And a little gap forming. Not a big one, but everything grows from little things, and Danny Nellison is now trying to work away here with Andre Schmil. But the speed of those chases, they just whopped them away. So the one rider survived that slipped away. And we'll try and have a look and see who it is. It's the Panasonic. It must be still Fondriest. He's still away up the road. And this is a strange move by Maurizio. He's trying to ride the whole race off his back wheel. It's not a very clever move because it's such a long straight road and they can see him all the time. There's hardly any crowds around. So you can't nip down the crowd line and try and hide from view of the chasers. He's in full view and they know it, and he's not going to get too far. There's another tactic he might be playing here. He's making the riders chase him down, and that will take the pressure off sprinter Olaf Ludwig, or even indeed Vyacheslav Yekimov. Both of those riders now content to follow. Van der Aarden is going to finish it off though. Erik van der Aarden coming right up on the back wheel of the world champion of a couple of years ago. And that's it over. Fondriest will now have to take his place back in the peloton, and it looks to me as though, well, I was going to say that Yekimov might launch an attack. He eased out the saddle, but he's gone back in position. And now somebody going down on the far side of the road. And that's an attack again, and a very strong attack indeed, and that's come from Zhdanov from the TVM team, Vasily Zhdanov, and he's gone clear now. They've split the field with that chase, so it's getting really rough at the back of this race now. A lot of riders are going to find themselves under pressure as we come down towards the last few miles. They've mastered Zhdanov straight away, put him right back in the bunch, and look at the line now down the right-hand side of the road. Little tail of half a dozen riders getting back on. And there's the split, and the split was caused by the chase down of Fondriest by Erik van der Aarden, and that is a big split. Somebody opened the door, and there'll be one or two riders in that back bunch will not be too pleased with the man that lost the wheel in the line. There's still a chance they're going to come back because now they've picked up Fondriest. There will be a slowing at the front. Still Brian Home and Sean Kelly creeping up, second in line here, riding on the back wheel of his teammate, Yuri Manilov. Francois LeMarchand, Jean-Claude Colotti, Jacques Hanegram. Names we expect to see at the front, perhaps. but none of them the sprinters who look to have their day here now. And just as you say that, you've got an attack being launched and no reaction. Perhaps they feel no one man can survive the race today. Well, that's Jesper Skibby who's launching the counter-attack, and Erik van der Aarde is taking his wheel. Let's go and try and have a look who this breakaway is, because Skibby is a very strong rider and van der Aarde has been very attentive as well. He may not even know that Frans Maassen has had a problem, because he would look for Maassen in the finish, but he hasn't seen him, because Maassen will, if he's back in this race, will be in that second group from the chase to get back from the flat. And the split, you know, is still on. This group is still in two pieces. Oh, there they come. They're just about going to get back on in time for the finish. And some desperate riding being done by the front of this group, but they're going to come back. And still at the front of the group, it's the Ariosto rider, Barney Ries, the Danish rider on the Ariosto team. We've seen just about every one of the riders in the action today. It was Stefan Joho that started the ball rolling, and since then we've seen Bathé, Goltz, Jarman, Ries, all up at the front. And that's Bauer who's launched an attack on the outside. It's Manuelov who's taken his wheel. Two Festina riders who've jumped on. So Steve Bauer is really searching for good form now. Of course, he's got Paris-Roubaix coming up. That's a race he always features in. At least he has these last 2 years, with a fourth and a second. That very controversial second place on the photo finish with Eddie Plankett a couple of years ago. And Bauer is looking probably the sharpest we've seen him for 2 years. Well, he's tried to stretch the field. It hasn't worked. He's gone back into the field. And the two Festina riders contented to take up the running. One of them is Yuri Manuelov. Van der Aarde too, always willing to have a little group going away here. Interesting move. 13 kilometers from the finish at Geluwe, and that's around 7 miles to go. All of it flat, no more obstacles on the course at all. But they really would like to break off this main highway that's running down towards Wevelgem, because once they could get around a few bends, they might be able to break the elastic in this long, thin line of riders. This is Bauer again getting himself into a very good move. Manuelov is the Festina rider, I think, and that looks like the long, lanky legs of Philippe Casado. Yes, it is, Philippe Casado. Well, Casado is not a big winner, but he's a very strong rider. Sorry about these little picture breakups. It's our old story that we do have with these live pictures. The problems of the pictures going up from the motorbikes to the helicopters. When we go underneath trees, the signal line is broken and we get the picture breaking up. But nothing wrong with your video, and what we're watching is Ghent Wevelgem, and my goodness me, this is turning out to be a very, very good finish indeed. Bad luck for Jean-Cyril Robin. He is a young French amateur in his first year as a professional. He's flatted at the back, and look at that picture now. Two perfect bunches of riders, the wind coming in almost from the 11 o'clock corner of our picture. It's virtually on the nose, I would think. And so again, the attack of these three riders has split the field. Philippe Casado is the Z rider. Manuelov, Yuri Manuelov is the Lotus Festina rider, and Steve Bauer now finding himself in a position from where he could win Ghent Wevelgem. This would be a tremendous result, and this is the sort of result that not only Motorola wants, but Bauer himself needs a good result. And he's got away. There's been attack, attack, attack. Every move has been countered, but at this moment in time, the peloton has split, and Bauer is finding himself with two very strong riders here. Very strong riders indeed. Because Manuelov, the Soviet rider, is a solid rider. He only got, I think it was, one win last year, Yuri Manuelov, but he's always in the thick of the action. Philippe Casado, well, Philippe Casado is a most interesting rider, but I remember him best riding the British Milk Race, and he was race leader in that race after winning the opening stage. Had the most unfortunate accident, Philippe Casado. He didn't make a left-hand bend, and unfortunately the farmer left the gate open to the field. He went straight through into the field, which at the time was very funny. The riders started laughing, and then the field, although it was 6 feet high in wheat, was ploughed furrows. He went through the furrows, went off his bike and broke his collarbone. And that was a very sad end to Philippe Casado's visit to Britain that year. And it was such a slow motion crash as well. It should never have been. But Casado is a strong rider, and at the moment they've stolen 11 seconds at the height of the race. Still Van der Arden, there he is in the middle of our picture. Olaf Ludwig, Kelly, well Kelly won't want to chase now, he's got his man away. Manulov. So the pacemaking now being left to the others to do. And as far as the eye can see, you'll see the motorbikes, and up in the distance there certainly are the three scapers. This is Stefano Zenata from the Gatorade team setting the pace. First time we've seen Gatorade up there. One or two questions now being asked amongst the riders. You can see the heads turning, saying, well, what are we going to do? And the answer is launch a counter-attack. Two riders have gone clear. And just 10 kilometers to go. Well, Motorola need a result desperately. This is the best team they've ever put together, and it's not through their own fault. They've been in the moves, it just hasn't worked out for them yet this year. It sometimes goes like that in professional cycling. But now this again is BOUILLON from the Kohlstop team, still prepared to work hard. Pull the race into a long thin line. I think the second group has latched onto the back of the front group, so we've got one big group here, and we're going to be something like 100 riders strong. Nobody prepared to assist at the front, and if you don't work together you won't catch the three riders we can now see in the corner of our screen. Casado appears to be the strong man in that leading group. Bauer in second place, Manulov bringing up the rear. Maybe he doesn't really want to be in that breakaway. Maybe he wants the race to come back together because of Sean Kelly back in the main field and looking quite well. And that's Herman Frison in second place, former stage winner in the Tour de France. And 18 seconds, this is going up and looking extremely good now for Steve Bauer. I think Bauer will be the favourite of these three if he could get it through to the finish. But Casado can turn up a nice finish, and Manulov, well, he's a very strong boy. It'll be a good sprint. There, moving up on the outside is Yekimov, trying to take note now of what's happening at the front. Plenty of riders, it seems, willing to work at the front. You've got the Festina team with Manulov in the lead. You've got the Motorola team, and surprisingly there are no Motorola riders here in this group trying to break up the attack. And now it's being left to PDM. Uwe Raab is the rider to our right, points winner in the Tour of Spain last year and the year before. And PDM now trying to close this down because they've got their sprinters, and Raab is one of them in this group. And the big sprinter in the group, Jean-Paul Van Poppel. Now, and if PDM can bring this up to the finish, well, they can expect Jean-Paul Van Poppel to probably deliver the goods. Well, they've only themselves to blame for this because Casado, Bauer and Manulov, they got away seemingly in the height of the chase when everybody was together. They were all riding at top tempo, and somehow those three managed to slip off the front of the field. Blowing here is number 35, is Marc Sergeant. There's Maurizio Fondria scrimmaging too. They want this race back together again. They've allowed it to slip out of their grasp too because they want Ludwig up there for the sprint. And still Manulov now turning a big gear, so clearly he does want to keep this breakaway going. Manulov now moving over nicely. Bauer comes through, full of fight. Steve Bauer may suddenly have found himself here in the winning move at Ghent Wevelgem. And just when everybody thought it was coming down to a battle royal of the sprinters, Bauer, Philippe Casado and Yuri Manulov have got clear of the field. And this would be a great result. Well, we're going through the train passing here and no trains coming, so the three leaders are through. What they'd like now is for the gate to go down. That would stitch up Ghent Wevelgem for sure. But it's not going to happen. There's only about 18 seconds. We haven't had any further news, an update on that. But it's not that far away. Panasonic's organising the chase now. That's Jack Hanegraaff as well. They're beginning to send the men up to the front now. In fact, there are 4 Panasonics up here now. And no sign yet of Olaf Ludwig. Jack Hanegraaff is the rider setting the pace there for the Panasonics. And 18 seconds it stays. So they're holding them now. Now the question is, can they just hang on? They're very, very close to the finish. And Steve Bauer needs this desperately, and he knows it. It may have come a little bit early for him. He was thinking of a good ride in Paris-Roubaix. He's finding himself now right at the front of Ghent Wevelgem. He looks over his shoulder. He must now be feeling as though this is it, if we can hang on. Casado's still got plenty of fight in him. And it would be a great result too for Philippe Casado. And coming from a surprise quarter 2 for the Z team. 6 kilometres from the finish, 18 seconds the lead. Yuri Manulov, you must not write him off either. He's waiting for a big win as a pro, and it could be today. There's no room for error in this escape now. 18 small seconds, and the Panasonics have got this main field by the scruff of the neck now, as Maurizio no, this is Vyacheslav Yekimov who's at the front now. Fondriest in second place, Hanegraaff in third place. Those three riders now asking and expecting no help from anybody else in the main field. 15 seconds, they've nibbled away 3 seconds. This is dramatic, this pursuit, and in fact Fondriest very annoyed with the television cameras there, because he's coming through those chicanes so quickly we can't get out of the way of him. And I think there's a little word in the ear of our pilot on the motorbike there. Well, he probably doesn't speak Italian anyway. So Fondriest moves over, waits for Hanegraaff to come through. This is a tremendous chase down by Panasonic, and I think it's the first time this year I've seen a team actually get themselves together in this way to start the chase. There have been so many individuals in the sport this year and nobody organising themselves properly, but PDM interfering because they too feel as though they could bring this race to close. They need to bring it down. This rider is Gert Jacobs, who came into cycling when he could have been an international speed skater. He skated for Holland as a junior and then found there was more money to be made in riding a bike. He still rides, he still speed skates a lot though in the winter with the team, and they go to the winter training camps. But Jacobs sharing the pace a little bit, thinking that, well, hoping that Jean-Paul Van Poppel will do something about it when they come down to the finish. We're closing in now, just 5 kilometres from the finish. That is 3 miles to go now. The gap, well, we've seen 15 seconds, nothing less, and Bauer is turning the gears now. Steve Bauer beginning to look like the man who won the Grand Prix of Zurich back in 1989. He's been twice a leader of the Tour de France. He's finished 4th in the Tour de France. On a downer a bit last year, now it looks as though Steve Bauer is beginning to show signs of his old form, and it couldn't come at a better time either. But the field is closing in. The work of the Panasonics and PDM is taking its effect. It's whether they can hang on now, and if anybody indeed can jump away from the field and get across. This is Eros Polly who's at the lead now. First time I've seen him since he turned professional, and he's at the front of the group now, trying to close it down too. He's got every reason to do it as well, of course. Mario Cipollini, the big sprinter of this year, won 3 stages of Paris-Nice. He's in this group as well, and Cipollini was second to Abdu Japarov in this race just over a year ago. Well, just on a year ago. 8 seconds is the gap. Well, can they survive? We're about 2 miles from the finish, no more than that. 8 seconds, you can see them at the top of our picture, and the arrowhead forming now because the peloton is beginning to look over each other's shoulders and to try and gauge whether they can jump the gap and leave the peloton exactly where it is. That'll be the next thought in somebody's mind now. Wipe the leaders out and go on to victory. 3.4 kilometres to go. We're just on 2 miles from the finish. Steve Bauer, Philippe Casado setting the pace. Manuelov, one thing's for sure, they'll be cupped if they get caught, and there they are. The flag of Belgium is flying. Well, there's no Belgians in the lead of Ghent Wevelgem yet. A Frenchman, a Soviet, well, he's not even a Soviet anymore now. He's a member of the Commonwealth of Independent States, and also a Canadian on the road into Wevelgem. Bauer, his right elbow kicking out there, is going through now. They keep checking over the shoulders. This will be desperately close, and it's possible. What a superb finish this is turning out to be. 7 seconds, they've nibbled a second off it. So the Panasonics, the boys from the MG boys team, for Cipollini trying to get up there. The Panasonics for Ludwig, the PDM for Van Poppel. They want the sprinters in the act, and they're riding now at around 33 miles an hour to get them in the act. A tremendous finish. Still the Panasonics are dragging this race along, and they're almost on the wheel. They're not going to make it, you know. We are about, I don't know, 1.5 miles, if that, from the finish, and I don't think they're going to make it. This is Dirk de Wolf who's going through now. De Wolf trying to jump across the gap. He's had a tremendous start to the year. He's got good early season form. So Dirk de Wolf for the Gatorade team, going over to the team this year, slips it up a gear, and it's de Wolf who ends this, and somebody is immediately attacking, and it's one of the riders from the Tulip team. It might well be Brian Home who's gone. That's the tactic now, and in a split second they've wiped away the 3 men who I really felt had this race in the bag of 5 miles out. But they've gone, and the counter-attacks too. That's Hanegraaff again saying we're not doing all this work for Ludwig, and somebody's going to slip us. And Ludwig is in that bunch right near the front now as Hanegraaff tries to close down on the Tulip boys who have attacked. Well, this is a superb end to Ghent Wevelgem, one of the best I've ever seen. And it looks to me as though it is going to be a battle of the sprinters, despite all of the efforts by the organisers, Steve Bauer, Philippe Casado and Yuri Manuelov, to do otherwise today. It was Brian Home who was out. He's been brought back. and the field is once again all together, and now it's the charge of the Light Brigade. The sprinters will shortly appear at the front. It's a question now to see which ones will get up here, because they're all in the bunch, and I can't think of one super sprinter in the world who is not in this group at the moment. Rudy Darlan's coming through. A word in the ear of Yekimov. Goodness knows what you say to a rider when you're on the front and a mile from the finish. I don't know. And Ludwig, there he is, licking his lips now, saying, well done lads, you've got me towards the finish. Now I'll try and win the race for you. He's on the wheel of his two super domestiques, Rudy Darlans and Yekimov, and somebody's gone down the outside. It's Jan Shaw who's gone for Motorola. That's a tremendous move by Shaw, because he's not going to take much in the sprint, although he can finish well. He was one of the riders who went down in that sprint on the Champs-Élysées last year in the Tour de France when Abdou Japarov twanged into the barriers. Shaw was one of the unlucky men that went through the air. He was riding for the Chateau d'Ax Gatorade team then. Now he's with Motorola, and the gap is there again. Well, they won't give up, will they? They're not going to give this an armchair ride to the sprinters in this year's Ghent Wevelgem. They've thrown attack after attack. 1 kilometre to go. We're underneath the kite now, a kilometre from the finish. And that is Yekimov, who's got up to Jan Shaw. They're hesitating, and here comes the line. It's being led here by Gatorade, and I think this is Fidenza, who's bringing the riders through on the right of our picture. Oh, this is going to be some sprint finish now. Dirk de Wolf is up here as well. And no sign yet of Ludwig, who seems to have been pushed a little bit out of it. We're half a kilometre from the finish now, as the sprinters are coming to have their own at the end. But we've got a number of riders up here now who could win this sprint with their superb finish. But still, the rush has got to come, because we're not seeing the big names I would expect, as the Gatorade riders open up the sprint now, and at about 300 yards to go. This is going to be a long sprint indeed, but still the sprinters we would expect aren't here. Ludwig, he's not in the frame down there. Just look at this now as they start to go up towards the outside of the line. There's a lot of bumping and barging going on the right of our picture as the race goes over to the left, now over to the right as we look at the finish here, as Adriano Baffi is coming through on the far right of our picture, run by Abdou Japarov, and Cipollini moves over, and it looks to me as though there was a touch of shoulder there. In fact, that is Cipollini who throws his arms in the air, but Abdou Japarov, the little demon sprinter from Tashkent, was through on his inside. But you know, we'll have a look at that again in slow motion, simply because it looked to me as though Cipollini tried to hold Abdou Japarov out of the sprint there, and if he did that, well, there's no reason to worry, because Abdou Japarov was through first anyway. But the field have come in. It was a battle royal for the sprinters, and at the end of the day we have the same result of 1 year ago. Can you believe that? And Cipollini was second in a disputed sprint finish then also to Jamaluddin Abdou Japarov, and it looks to me as though that's what we have today. Well, we'll get the finish together again for you there. We'll have a look at that in slow motion. Sean Kelly just slipping through the picture on the left there, and bad luck too for Steve Bauer, because I thought for a moment there that Steve Bauer really had that race sewn up. He was so unlucky, caught just before the kilometre kite, as we look down now on the crowd that's mobbing the finishers here in Ghent Wevelgem. But we'll try and have a look at that finish again. The reason I say that is, just as they came towards the banner there, it looked to me as though Cipollini or Abdou Japarov put a hand out and tried to hold either or back. Now let's have a look at it again. Watch the sprint. It's from the left to the centre of our picture. Oh, we're not going to see it this time. They're still setting it up, but we'll wait for that to come back on our screen, because the rider's returning back down the road now to the changing rooms. This has been a super Ghent Wevelgem. Now we'll try and have a look at it. Here we go. Centre of our picture is where we're looking, and the speed of Abdou Japarov over to the left of the two riders in the sprint. There's Abdou Japarov coming through. Sensed he was coming through. See Cipollini moving across, and there's a hand goes out. A hand definitely went out there from Abdou Japarov, and that might be why Cipollini has put his hands in the air as victory, because he intends to lodge a protest and leave hopefully Abdou Japarov watching on the sidelines. Well, I feel a little bit sorry there, because you know, Cipollini was definitely taking Abdou Japarov towards the barriers, and one has to ask the question now, is Abdou afraid of those barriers after that horrendous crash he had in the Tour de France? There's the finish. Clearly he was going better than Cipollini, and clearly Cipollini thinks he's won the race. That's Capio in third place, and Baffi nearest the camera gets fourth, and so a good finish for Baffi. And Johan Capio is having a tremendous year, a winner of Het Volk, and now he's third here in the Ghent Wevelgem, and he must be pretty pleased with the way things are going. But there's no doubt in my mind that there was an infringement in that sprint. It's a question of which way you read it. because Cipollini certainly was moving Abdul-Japarov out. Abdul-Japarov was equally going a quicker approach to the line, but he did appear to pull the jersey of Cipollini. I think if you make a decision to disqualify, you must disqualify both. And let's try and see it again here from the helicopter, because this should tell us all. The rider started to move up on the outside there, and then the break from the right of the picture. That's Fidanza who's going there. And then watch the far right of our picture, because that's Cipollini waving his bike around on the far right in the white. Abdul-Japarov creeping up on his back wheel, going clearly quicker than Cipollini, now moving to his outside and kicking like mad. And there's the hook that comes from Cipollini, and there is the drag which comes from little Abdul-Japarov. Now, if I'd have been the commissaire, I would have let the result stand, because if you disqualify either of them, or both of them rather, you would have had to give victory to Capio, and clearly it was a battle between the Italian and the little Soviet rider from Tashkent. So I'm afraid the result is coming to us that they have disqualified Abdul-Japarov. Even though at this moment they've given the flowers, they'll be taking them off him shortly. The winner of this race on a disqualification is Mario Cipollini, second Johan Capio, and third Adriano Baffi. And Abdul-Japarov, although declared the winner here, is actually out of Ghent Wevelgem, not declassed, but absolutely disqualified. A very hard decision indeed. So from the Ghent Wevelgem, I hope you've enjoyed what was a great finish. From me, Phil Liggett, goodbye. Yep.